What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 40 of the Steam Deck Podcast, Flip Screen Games weekly podcast, all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my partner in Steam Deck related crimes, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. What's going on?
Yeah, not much. Back with Don't Tell the Other Children, my favorite podcast. You know, don't
Oh,
tell, don't tell Flip Screen or Nintendo
wow.
Noise,
Harsh but
but here
fair,
we
you know?
are. I get to nerd out on this podcast. It's great,
That's
and
true.
we get to talk about weird things like some of the questions this week.
Well, here's my question. Did you and Max address the comment that we got on the week that
We
you were
did.
out?
Max, you should go back and watch that episode. Max issued a statement. He put a suit on. He addressed
He made
the
his public
controversy.
apology.
Yeah, he made his
Yeah.
apology, basically saying I was a waste of space. I get it though. You too. Gotta you gotta drum up some drama when I'm not
We
around.
gotta gas ourselves up somehow.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite thing about that comment was, like, just the utter sincerity of it, and, like, somebody replied and was like, "Bro, they're clearly joking." Like, so we don't know anything. Like, Steve's the brains of the operation on this show. I think that's clear.
I don't know anything either. I just get all my knowledge from ChatGPT.
Fair enough. So, anyway, we're both plugged into the mother brain for this episode. We're ready to purport as if we know things about Steam Deck, right? So this week, of course, we're going to be talking about Steam Deck screen mods, which are the hot topic on everybody's mind because, of course, there was the reveal of a 1200p screen that you could get set up on your Steam Deck, which is very interesting, of course, because I think when we talk about our feelings about the Steam Deck hardware, one of the only things that we're ever really consistently critical about is the screen, right? It's a serviceable screen, but it could be better.
Yeah, I think that's the issue I think most people have with it, and I think it was one of the things that people were really excited about with the ROG Ally, that it's got that nicer display with like the richer color palette, and it's a VRR display. This will not be a VRR display. It's still a MIPI based display. It should theoretically allow you to adjust the refresh rate in the same way that the original Steam Deck display does. But it is still just a 60 hertz panel in the same way that the original Steam Deck display is. You can find out more about this at deckhd.com if you want to, but they're reporting that yeah, it's 1200p screen, so it bumps up the resolution from 1280 by 800 to 1920 by 1200, which is obviously larger than Full HD, which is 1920 by 1080. You got better color accuracy with 95% of the sRGB color gamut being covered versus the deck's 68%. So potentially more vibrant, more accurate colors coming from your games, and you get the anti-glare coating on these screens, and they're looking to target $99. But I guess we'll find out when they do come.
So I have a couple questions for you here, Steve. So tell me about Deck HD. What's the situation here? Are they an official licensed partner? Is this a third party situation?
This is very much a third party situation. So it's coming from a company called FX Technology, or otherwise known as FX Tech. And they made the rounds recently with some of their smartphones. So they are one of the only companies with like slide up keyboards, and they're bringing them back and they're like releasing those. But they've also got some other products focusing in on Web3 and 5G and all sorts of stuff. So this is kind of a departure for them, and it's not underneath the FX Tech brand. They're launching this new Deck HD brand. My guess is that they're big fans of the Steam Deck and they wanted to improve the screen, and they were able to source some components which were better, or at least perceived better than what Valve was offering. Someone over on Twitter was teasing it, Belika011, and I'll post a link in the description. And you can see the panel running. It seems to have a little bit more contrast to it, just at the angle that they were posting it. And you can see that they show a screenshot in desktop mode as well, where you can see that it's running at 1200 by 1920. Curiously, the refresh rate in desktop mode is reported as 56 hertz. So I wonder if that's just an issue, or if it is running at 56 hertz, or maybe it's a variable panel. Maybe they changed the refresh rate to 56 hertz on that panel. I'll be curious to find out, but no idea when these are coming out yet. Looks like it's still a vertical display that's been rotated. So in Windows, you may still have some of those weird issues where if you launch older games, it assumes it's on a vertical display, so it doesn't really take into consideration that you've rotated it in the OS. So still not ideal in that situation, but by all accounts, it looks like a nicer display. Still the same 400 nits brightness, so you can expect it to be as bright as the Steam Deck, which I think could be a little bit brighter. I would have hoped for it to be a little bit brighter than the original Steam Deck display. And I can't decide if I want to pick one of these up because I think there's still a lot of questions to be answered about it. And number one question on my mind is, how's this going to affect battery life?
That was gonna be my next question for you is what do we think the impact is on battery life, and do you think that's a worthwhile trade? Because, like you said, I mean, this is a significantly better screen, right? And the estimated price tag looks to be about $100. That doesn't seem egregious. Like that does seem like I could see myself making that upgrade for the sake of a much improved experience. But this is something I actually was excited to share with you on the show this week. I of course missed all of our shows last week because I went on a short vacation, and I took a 2-day trip to Disneyland with my wife and a couple of our friends. And it's a 6-hour flight from the East Coast to the West
Mhm.
Coast. So I was very like, hey, like this is a great opportunity for me to chip away at Persona before Zelda comes out. And I found out the hard way that me playing that game on max settings, that battery life lasted for an hour and a half of that
Yeah,
six
you
hour
could
flight.
probably get that down, like, if you
Quite a
wanted to
bit.
run that at 30 FPS and, like, restrict the TDP, you'd
Yeah.
probably get a lot more out of it,
And by
especially
the
on
by the time
Persona.
I realized that I needed to do that, it was too late, and I was like, oh well, okay." On the ride home, right?
Yeah.
I adjusted it, and it was fine. It lasted longer. I got more performance out of it. But my point for bringing that up is that the more intensive the game and the higher fidelity that you're trying to target with it, the less usable it is as a handheld. And your mileage may vary on if that matters because we know that a lot of people like don't necessarily take it on the road. They do use it more at home and kind of as like a couch situation or in bed or whatever. If I had been on a airport, I flew with Spirit, which sucks, right? So they didn't have a plug for me to plug it in. Every other flight I've ever taken in my life, I've had
Yeah, that's
you know
weird.
a an input. Oh, they're like real budget. They're like, if you want a bag, you want anything, like it's extra money.
Oh, yeah, it's like
Um,
Ryanair in the UK.
yeah. So it's like, God forbid they put an AC charger in so that I can plug in my 100 devices that I bring on the plane. Um, so it's like, I guess that's the question, right? Is like, how often are you going to be in a scenario where the battery life trade is that significant, right? Where it matters that much, where I have it on the road, but I'm in a place. To me, genuinely, unless you're in a car or on a plane, I can't think of a scenario where you don't have access to a charger that would be relevant. So it's like, if
Yeah, I
this
know,
is,
but you don't wanna be tethered to the wall because at that point, it's just like, "Well, why don't I just play this on my PC or play this on my game console, on my TV?" At that
and
point,
and
I
that's the
kinda
thing
do
is,
want to be able to use it portably, and if this reduces, say, you reduce the hour and a half you had down to 1 hour, I could see that being a real issue. I mean, granted, you theoretically could just run this at a lower resolution, right? But we don't know what the situation's gonna be. I would imagine they need to have drivers that are specifically for this screen. Is that going to be creating an issue in the future with SteamOS and their updates? Because obviously, Valve are expecting that specific display to be on the Steam Deck and on that device, and I would imagine that they're going to expect that going forward because they're still using the same panel, from what we can tell.
yeah,
Um, but I think the battery life is a big question. Aside from the higher resolution, though, I think that the higher resolution for me is, I don't care. I run most of my games at 720p rather than 800p, so I can eke out that tiny little bit more performance, and I don't mind those black bars top and bottom. But I know a lot of people do, and it does bother them. And I feel like trying to push the Steam Deck to run a bunch of these larger games at over 1080p at a 1200p resolution, it's just asking for trouble. I think for me, the color reproduction is probably going to be something that interests me more, and I think it's going
Yeah.
to be something that interests a lot of people more because we had that report a couple of weeks ago, and you can go and download SteamOS 3.5 now if you want to, and you'll see that vibrancy slider in there, and it does enable you to tweak the vibrancy at the operating system level. And we obviously had Vibrant Deck as one of the Decky plugins that was really popular previously. So it seems like people do want more saturated colors from their Steam Deck, and this may be a way to do it at a hardware level rather than a software level, while not sacrificing any of that color reproduction.
Yeah, which that makes me consider it, I think, more highly because, like, I'm kind of with you that I don't know that I need more resolution on the actual like. I don't know. I don't know how much I need to play games in a higher resolution on the deck itself, right? Like when I am just playing it in handheld. Obviously, we've talked about how it would be nice to have that option docked or whatever. But the color saturation is something that I think I would appreciate having more of, especially like when it comes to like, trying to like um accurately reproduce the vibe of retro games and stuff like that. Like having a truer color palette, is something that I care about. It's why I bought an OLED Switch, right? Like I'm a big believer in OLED screens because of that, because I do like having a truer, color map. Um,
Yeah, we
but
don't know what the contrast ratio on this is, which is interesting. I'd be very interested to find that out. I don't know what the Steam Deck's contrast ratio is, um, but I can imagine it's not very good. So it looks like people measured the contrast ratio at 1241 to 1, um, which is which is not great. So I would hope that we can get some richer blacks on this panel. My hope is that they reveal that contrast ratio level at some
yeah.
point, even if it's 1,000 to 1 rather than 1241 to 1. It's a marked improvement. That's usually what you expect from like an IPS display. Um, Obviously, on an OLED panel, it's infinity to 1 because it is true black, so you'll never be able to recreate that on an IPS panel, but hopefully we get some way there because I do agree with you. I think that is my biggest complaint with the Steam Deck. We've spoken about power and that we'd love to have more power in the Steam Deck moving forwards, but I'm not kind of champing at the bit for it. I'm not really
No,
excited about
honestly,
that.
I would be way more if like Valve came to us, right, and was like, "You guys, obviously the most dialed in Steam Deck fans in the world, host of the Steam Deck podcast. We need to come and get your sage wisdom. We're going to iterate on the Steam Deck. What would you care about more? More power under the hood or a better screen and more battery life?" I'd pick those. I don't think it's underpowered at all. Like the number of games that I want to play on it that don't play is a way shorter list than games that I'm impressed work on it. The fact that you can
Yeah.
play Elden Ring, which was the biggest game of last year on this thing, and it runs basically perfectly. Obviously, with some caveats, you're not getting the same performance you'd get out of your, high end rig or out of, if you're playing it on a, an Xbox Series X or a PS5 or whatever. But like,
Yeah, but I
it
mean
doesn't need to do that,
that game runs better than it did on PS4 and Xbox One on a Steam Deck in some
right?
cases. Proton removes some of the stuttering. This week we saw the release of Far Cry 6 over on Steam for the first time, and people have been really excited about it, been
Yeah.
playing that. I can tell you that runs fantastically on the Steam Deck. I've been playing a version that I got last year from the Ubisoft Connect store,
So
and that runs phenomenally. And like you can run these modern games. It's just some of the more poorly optimized PC ports, like The Last of Us, which you're really going to struggle with. But you can eke out 30 FPS, and Valve were very upfront when they revealed the Steam Deck a couple of years ago in saying that we're targeting 720p, 30 frames per second, and I feel like they've very much lived up to that and
yeah.
made compromises in the right places because I feel if they were eking out even more power from the chip that's in the Steam Deck, the battery life would be pathetic. It would be
Exactly.
sub 1 hour, which was the reports we were getting about the ROG Ally last week.
I think that's the bigger thing, right? Like, and again, I said it at the top. I think the thing that we're most vocally critical about is the screen, but I honestly think the biggest problem with the thing is probably its battery. It's the battery is not good. It's abysmal for how powerful the device is and how much you can do with it. And I totally understand why. right? Like putting a really high capacity battery in this thing would drive the prices up a lot.
Well,
But
and the weight of that device, and it's
that's
already
a
a
great. It's already heavy.
heavy thing. Like, you don't want that any much heavier than it is.
But like was I think it's Steve Yaki in the Discord, I think was the one who
Mhm.
showed the custom rig he has of like he has an external battery plugged in and strapped to his Steam Deck. Like, I mean, kudos for a very creative solution and generally or genuinely now it's something I'm considering myself after the experience I had on the road. But like that seems kind of ridiculous that there isn't a better solution, right? That there isn't some kind of official solution to be like, "Hey, yeah, you wanna get more than 3 hours out of this thing. You wanna get
I
more than
kind
an
of feel like
hour and a half out of it
that's like
with a high
Valve's
quality game."
That's like Valve's hands-off approach though, right? That they've
Yeah,
made one official accessory, which is the Steam Deck Dog, but they were very open about, they weren't first to the market with these things. We had that Amazon Basics dongle on day one pretty much, and then there was JSOX and a bunch of other companies that came out with
yeah,
third-party docks ahead of Valve's official solution. Valve's official solution comes with a charger, an official brick, and it also comes with the fact that it has built-in firmware updating. So there are reasons to buy official accessories, but I don't see Valve going, you know what, we'll make an external battery pack that's
no.
like molded to it and
I wish
fits
they would though,
perfectly.
because like the situation that Steve shared on the Discord, right, where it's like it's plugged into the USB-C and then it's kind of like strapped on the back. It would be awesome if there was like a proprietary one that could snap on and it had a grate for the fans so that you're not covering the fans, but you could like just snap it on the back of your Steam Deck. And yeah, it makes it a little heavier, but it doesn't mess with the ergonomics and it doesn't block the buttons or anything. Like you could just have something that fits right in that center panel area, right? Um, I'm sure somebody will eventually come up with something that meets that need, but you
I
know,
think they kind of already exist. Like there's the JSOX mod case, there's the Project Kill Switch over at Dbrand, and those have like those kind of bayonet adapter things that you could potentially stick onto a battery pack and like attach that on. There's been like a bunch of solutions. There's like 3D printed solutions that people have done. I would imagine at some point we'll get something like something from Anchor. There's the Deckmate that you can get, which I don't know if you've seen. It's sort of like a plastic thing that like clips on the back, and then you have a bunch of these attachments, and you can stick them onto other devices that you use. So people
that's cool.
have been like sticking them on to battery packs, so they can kind of slide that on. They're well worth taking a look at, but they're kind of it's a cottage industry. They're a handmade product. They're sold on Etsy, so they're a much smaller device, not made at scale, and potentially, finding replacements for that might be difficult moving forwards. Whereas if Valve did have an official solution, you'd be able to go buy it from iFixit or buy it from Valve,
Yeah.
and just kind of get it replaced.
See, because like even I'm looking at the JSOX option for this, and it's like no disrespect, right? Like they make good shit, but it's like the JSOX external battery it's just a battery, right? Like it doesn't connect to your Steam Deck in a way that's convenient. It's just you're carrying a brick around. And
Hmm.
that's fine. Like it's not the worst solution in the world, but like it's not ideal either. I'd love for something that was like a little bit more um portable friendly, you know?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's not even
I mean,
like, when you think about the case for your Steam Deck, there's not space in it for anything else either. So it's not like I can just slide a battery in there. It's like in
well,
any
there
backpack.
is though. Like on the back when that like
Yeah,
pulley thing is, I slide a battery pack in there, or
interesting. I
I
put the
slide like
charger in there
Yeah, well,
sometimes.
you could, yeah, the chart I think it's designed for that, and like the more expensive model comes with a little bag for you to put
Yeah.
the charger in, and then slide it into that
I'm
section.
looking at JSOX has a bag. It's like a shoulder bag that has its own little it's got like a bunch of extra little compartments. I don't know, maybe
There's a
maybe
bunch
I'll
of
upgrade.
cool accessories that you can get now. I like that there are official, so like not official, but bespoke solutions specifically for the Steam Deck at this point,
Yeah.
which is really
I'll
good.
tell you what, I'm increasingly thinking about buying one of the transparent back plates and
Yeah, I really
replacing it.
want one as
They're
well.
so cool. I
The
like
thing
them
is,
so much.
I wanna do it all in one go. I want that, I want the 2 terabyte thing. If I'm gonna get a new screen, I wanna put that on at the same time because I don't wanna be going in and out of my Steam
Yeah.
Deck
You're never gonna do it
constantly.
then though, right? Because it's like when are you gonna drop let me drop like $300 to buy all of the things to upgrade it, you know?
So I do really want to get a new drive because I want to dual boot Windows and SteamOS, but the official solution to dual boot Windows and SteamOS still isn't here. We still don't have the installer for SteamOS, so it's not really feasible and not in an easy way anyway. So I've been kind of waiting for that to come before I go. You know what? I want a 1 terabyte or a 2 terabyte SSD. I'm going to shove that in. I'll give 1 terabyte for Windows, 1 terabyte for SteamOS.
That'd be cool. That would be really nice. So here's the crazy thing. This is just kind of an anecdotal thing. I have been spending a lot of time on like Facebook Marketplace and like eBay and some of those types of things, like looking for a CRT because I want to do some goofy projects with one, frankly.
Hmm.
Um, and I found somebody who's like, I have a Steam Deck and I'm trying to trade it for a MacBook, and I happen to have a MacBook that I came into that I'm not using for anything, and I'm like, maybe I wipe it, maybe I trade it, I get a second Steam Deck so that that one I can mod and fuck around with, and if I break it, it's like whatever, like can use
I
that
think
one
it's
as the
worth a
guinea
go.
pig.
I mean, I would install Windows on the internal drive on a second one if that was
Yeah,
what
and
you
then I
were
could
were
just make that
interested in.
one. Oh, I play all the Windows stuff on this one.
We spoke at length about it last week, while you were away because we had a couple of questions. I know, a bunch of people in the Discord have been playing around with Windows too. Windows 11 is just it doesn't run well enough off of a USB stick, so I went down to Windows 10 and I spoke about that. But even then, like PC Game Pass is just it's not as good as Xbox Game Pass. There's just the games just aren't on there. And
No,
even if you buy like games on Xbox, I was expecting to be able to play on my Steam Deck on PC, like Hitman I own. There's like a I only two of the games I own on Xbox were available as part of the Play Anywhere thing, so I could
really,
play them on PC.
that's crazy.
And I get that most of it's because I play all the first party titles on Game Pass, so I'm not buying those anyway. But I would have thought that some more of the third party stuff had carried over.
Yeah, yeah, you would think. I guess it probably is, like, when you think about it, like, that's something that they've kind of been evolving over time, like, PC Game Pass, like, in the last year has grown a lot, that library, so, hopefully it'll get better and the parity will be better, as it continues to evolve,
But yeah, none
but
of none of the Persona games are on there. I was like, oh, maybe I'll download Persona 5 and kind of pick up where I left off and play some more of that on my Steam Deck. But no, it's not available on PC Game Pass. It's not even available on the Windows Store. It's only on Steam on PC. So it's very strange.
annoying. Damn, I'm looking at some custom, deck shells right now, Steve, there's some good stuff.
There is, yeah. I really want to. I think I want to get a skin for mine at some point as well. But I know,
I think
depending on the skin, it can be a real pain to get it in the dock because the tolerances on the official dock are so tight.
That's why I don't wanna get a skin. I wanna get shells and just
Hmm.
replace them. I found somebody on Etsy that does custom shells, and you can just pick the colors, and they'll do them for you, and
You know
it's
the
like
you know the front shell is an extremely arduous task to replace, right?
I imagine it is, because that's why I'm imagining that JSOX only has the back
Yeah,
ones.
you have to take every part out of the Steam Deck in order to replace the front case.
How hard could that be?
Pretty hard. I mean, I fix it had replacing the screen as expert. I was like, this is pretty difficult because you have to take a bunch of components out,
Uh-huh.
unscrew a bunch of internal screws, then like melt the adhesive on the front panel and slowly lift it up, removing the connector so you don't like tear it, and then you can replace the screen, and then you've got to put all those parts back in and put it back together.
Damn. Yeah, I don't like that. That's, like, a lot of work.
No, and I think that's another reason why I think a lot of people won't go for the Deck HD is because they're just not willing to open up the Steam Deck at all, or this is just one step too far for them. Like, yeah, I can open it up and I can take out an
Oh,
SSD module and put a new one in, but replacing a screen is an entire different game.
Steve. Come on, though. I just found one on Etsy, and it's the PlayStation 1
Oh, the
like,
gray?
as a skin, and the individual, like, buttons themselves are, or, like, not the buttons, like, the touchpads are the reset and open
See,
buttons.
yeah, 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 I get a skin. I get a skin, absolutely, but not a shell. There's no way I'm replacing the shell. Not the front
Yeah.
shell anyway. Back shell, no problem. But then I'd want the smoky black to kind of match the front somewhat.
Yeah. I don't know. It'd be nice. It'd be nice. But
Yeah. You think you're gonna get one of these screens, or are you gonna wait for something like an OLED panel if we ever
I
get
don't
one of
know.
those?
I joined the mailing list to get an update about it. I I almost want to reach out and see if they'll send us one so that we can try it and like offer an opinion about it. Cause
Yeah,
like I
let's
would
send it to let's send it to you so you can
so I can
tear
do
your
it. Yeah,
Steam
I'll
Deck
replace
apart,
the
yeah.
screen. Great. um I'd like to get more confident doing that stuff. I really would. Like that's something it's like a goal of mine is to get more comfortable taking stuff apart and fixing it. So we'll see. Maybe I'll play around with it and do the back panel first as like a test. Um
Yeah, I had a moment the other day where I was like, "God, I really wish I had a 3D printer because my TV remote broke,
you
and
took
I
the
took
words
the
out of my
thing
mouth.
apart. I took the thing apart, and a piece of plastic had snapped off, and I was like, "There's no way I'm gonna be able to replace this tiny little piece of plastic that is on this one little wheel within inside this stupid LG TV remote."
Yep.
So I had to buy a whole new TV remote, whereas if I had a 3D printer, I could have just, like, printed a little lug that I could have then, like, stuck on with some epoxy, and it would have been fine, but,
Yeah, I was actually just about to say before you told me how insanely difficult it is to replace the front. I was like, man, we got to just get a 3D printer and we can open up our own shop. We'll sell our own.
I mean, you can buy these parts on iFixit anyway, so it's not too bad. The official parts you can buy.
Yeah, but you can't make crazy prints.
No, that's true. You
Like it
wouldn't
would just be cool to be
you
able
would
to be
not
like,
3D print a shell. That would be the point where you get into, like, resin molding.
you don't think you could because
You
it's like
could, it
too.
just would not you wouldn't be, like, a good experience, like,
Mm,
you'd have to, like, sand that down, and it wouldn't look good.
mm. I would really love to make my flip screen or my Steam Deck like the flip screen yellow.
Yeah, I love that yellow. Such a good yellow.
Such a
We
good
picked a good
yellow.
color.
That's like my favorite. Like it's like my favorite color on me now too. Is like the mustard yellow. It's like it's just
Mm.
good. It just looks good. You know.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. To be honest, though, I'd be fine with the skin. I think for now. I worry that I'm going to screw that up as well. I remember years ago, I got this screen protector and tried putting it on my phone, and you were meant to have this you meant to put like liquid on the screen, and it was awful, absolutely fucking
Mm.
awful. It was this weird whole thing.
I've never done like wraps. I've always thought that they don't look good and like it's really hard to get them on and like actually have it like sit right and look right. I'm sure that it can work, but I don't know. I feel
Yeah,
like it
that's
would.
when I want to go somewhere and be like, "Can you install this wrap? I'll give you like 20 quid to put this on really nicely for me."
Yeah. It's like I don't know. Like I'm sure it works to a degree if you do it right, but it's like I feel like I feel like I would mess it up. Like I feel like I'd mess it up and it would be a little off and then like I'd scratch it at some point and then I'd be picking at it when I was, anxious or whatever, not paying attention and
I'd love to see what other people's Steam Deck setups look like. Like we've seen Stevie Aki's over in the Discord. I want to know if people are rocking skins, if anyone else is like connecting things and sticking
ugh.
it to the back of their deck. Like I would love to know what cool mods and stuff people are doing.
I just found a mock-up somebody did where they like made it all has like hot pink accents. I'm just like, damn it. I just wish there was more. Like I wish it was easier to customize, you know? Especially now that there are 2 Steam Decks in my house. Like, when we were on vacation, every time I would pull it out, I'm like, "I don't know which one is which until I turn it on," you know?
Yeah, you're gonna have to get a skin for now.
Or a back panel.
Yeah, or a back
Because
panel.
that's easy enough, right? You just unscrew and you just pop it on, right? It seems like it's pretty simple.
Yes, that one's the easiest mod. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Because 'Cause
there's
you're
a
not
little
replacing the
bit.
buttons or anything. You're literally just putting it over, right?
Yeah,
So,
pretty
I could
much.
probably do that.
Make sure you take your SD card out before you open it.
Why? 'Cause it gets
You'll snap it.
oh, shit. Okay. Good to know. Yeah, maybe I'll grab one of these back plates and I'll make a video or something about how to
Yeah,
do it.
do it. Let's do it. We can at least talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah. You know what, Steve? They're giving me a 10% off code for my first purchase on JSOX. So there
You're
you
gonna have
go.
to do it.
Might have
Yeah.
to do it. Get my $3 off. So what about you? Like, is this a thing you could see yourself getting and trying out, or like would you rather
Mm,
wait for a screen that does have more functionality? But
I
then you
I
run into
think
the
I
same problem, right? If it did have VRR, if it was OLED, it would take even more power. So, like,
VR, it's never gonna have VRR. There's no way, unfortunately, on the current setup. I don't think we're gonna get a VRR mod, unless there's like an official adapter that comes from Steam, from Valve. I just can't see it because of the MIPI protocol that's being used. But I could see myself getting one of these if the black levels were better. Like, yes, it covers 95% of sRGB, but what is the contrast ratio? Is it a significant improvement over the current Steam Decks? Because if it's worse than the current Steam Decks, there's absolutely no way I want to pick up one of these panels, because
right,
that's
it's
one of
not worth
my
it.
main concerns with the current panel, is that the contrast just isn't good enough. You look at that panel, and when it's off or when you're like at a slight angle, you can see that it's gray. It's not really a black panel. And I want like a true black panel. Eventually, I'd love an OLED screen on these handhelds, but I just know that's going to be far too expensive. You just got to look at the Iron EOS to see how expensive it gets when you put an OLED panel in these.
So speaking of the Ioneo, right? And I guess like the other devices in this space, do you see this kind of like bringing the Steam Deck more in line with the ROG Allies display and like the advantages that that device has from a display perspective if people were to make this upgrade?
I think again that depends on the contrast ratio, because I think the contrast ratio on the especially the ROG Ally, 'cause it gets a lot brighter than the Steam Decks. Um, I think that's really where I would want to know where the improvements lie, but also I mean, apparently the contrast ratio is very similar, but I don't know what the brightness level on it is. Let me double check.
Because I think that'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, I think the ROG Ally kind of is not
Yeah,
really the threat that it could have seemed to be, right? Based on the reviews, but
hmm.
it would be interesting if the Steam Deck could match up in one of the few areas that it does have a definitive advantage, you know?
Yeah, so it looks like it's rated for 500 nits on the ROG Ally, so it does get
Okay.
significantly brighter peak brightness. And it's obviously a 120 hertz panel instead, which makes the refresh rate halving, and you don't even need to do any of that weird stuff with the refresh rate, because you can just run it at 40 frames per second if you want to, but that's going to eat into your battery life.
Mm.
I don't know. I kind of feel like it's missing the point somewhat, right? I don't think we need the higher resolution. I don't think that's why the ROG Ally is a compelling package. I think the compelling package that the ROG Ally offers is it's really the only Steam Deck competitor that's come close in terms of price point, in terms of power to performance, in terms of like a good display on one of these devices at a reasonable price. Whereas you look at the Iron Neo 2, starting price of $1,099, and then it easily goes up from there. You wanna add like a 1 terabyte drive in there, 32 gigs of RAM instead. Then 2 terabytes, you're looking at $1,500 for an Iron Neo 2 at that point, and it's a
That's
lot of
rough.
money to ask for one of these devices. But they are very nice. They do have very nice screens. They are more powerful. I don't know. I think for me, I don't think this is the answer that Steam Deck owners are kind of crying out for. But I'll await. I'll kind of put my reservations aside and wait for reviews or until I get my hands on one, and see what I think. Well,
Yeah, I would like to see what the reaction is and when we can kind of get into it and break down and really compare what advantages it's bringing to the table, rather than kind of just this nebulous offer of like better resolution, right? Because I think, as you said, I think that's kind of a small part of the display, quote unquote issue with Steam Deck right now. It's that the resolution is the thing I find myself probably thinking about the least, So if that's really its only major advantage, and again, we'll have to see the depth of the color accuracy and everything. That's a big differentiator.
yeah, I'm kind
But
of
I
wondering
don't know.
if this isn't the same panel that's in an Iron Neo 2 now that I'm looking at it. Because
What makes you say that?
they're also running a 1200p display. It looks like it's an IPS panel, um, 400 nits high brightness. We don't know I don't know what the color accuracy on that is, but it seems like it's probably the same panel. I can't imagine there's very many 16 by 10 aspect ratio screens at 1200p lying around the place ready to be put into devices. My guess is um, that FX technology has taken the raw panel that's going into other devices and put it into an enclosure that allows it to be slotted into the Steam Deck would be my guess.
Interesting. Well, we'll have to see. It's one that I definitely want to keep an eye on because I think it would be cool to get our hands on it and futz around with it and see, how it all shakes out. But at the very least, I am excited to see more third party developers like this make things that can potentially, give us more options to mod and improve our experience on the deck.
Yeah, definitely. I think this was something that we spoke about, right? That if Valve does another Steam Deck and it does improve the screen, will we be able to get upgrade kits from iFixit? And I feel like this gives me hope that that may happen. Even a motherboard change seems like it might be possible at this point, right? That you can just swap out components and SteamOS knows what to do with them. Because if you can just swap out the screen and SteamOS automatically knows, oh, it's now a 1200p screen in there instead of an 800p screen, and I know exactly what to do with it, then theoretically you should be able to change any component on the Steam Deck and we'll be able to deal with it.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of the fun of the whole handheld PC thing is that like PCs are inherently modular, right? So like the more that folks make things specifically for the Steam Deck, the more you'll have that ability to play around with it and try new stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get to a point where you can like replace key components of it that make it a lot more powerful and turn it into effectively a different device. But we'll see. It's certainly it's cool to see that cottage industry continue to grow.
Yeah.
So we got a couple more minutes here. I wanna get into one of the questions we have in the question block to close it out. But before that, let me remind you that this episode of the Steam Deck podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of May. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Sobi, Snacky Go, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You're all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to go and become a Patreon supporter, get your name read on the air, get the show early, all that kinds of good perks and goodies, you can head over to patreon.com/flipscreengames. It is, of course, the best way for you to show your support of the show. But if you don't have any money for us, guess what? That doesn't matter. There's a bunch of free ways you can get involved that won't cost you a pretty penny, but will still help us out quite a bit. You can head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can find links to all the places you can find the show all over the web. Go give us a subscribe on YouTube or on the RSS feed, whatever your podcast service is. Wherever you get the show, go give it a like. Go give it a subscribe on maybe one of the other platforms. Tell a friend about it. If you got a friend in your life that's enjoying the Steam Deck, go check it out. Maybe go check out one of our sister shows. There are dozens of ways that you can get involved and help us out and help the channel and the community grow that are free to do for you and help us out quite a bit. So however you choose to get involved, we thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Steam Deck podcast. So we're gonna quickly. I got a PSA for you. Steam game trials are back. The 90-minute game trial this week, starting with Dead Space Remake. Obviously, one of the hot games of the year. Go check it out if you want to play it for free. I'm sure we'll both try to, we'll get in there and see how we feel about it. But I want to close the show out on a question we got from the Largo embargo because I think it's a good question in line with this week, right? Talking about the modular nation or nature of the Steam Deck, the ability for it to grow and evolve. I think this question ties in there really nicely. So
Hmm.
I want to answer it this week. So Largo Embargo wrote in over on Discord and said, with each new console generation, we seem to be approaching a point of diminishing returns, meaning the improvements on the previous generations are getting smaller with each new generation. So to keep gamers buying the next consoles, new hardware is going to have to get innovative. This is one of the main reasons I bought a Steam Deck over a PS5, for instance. Do you think Valve has what it takes to become a pioneer in innovative new hardware for future generations and overtake Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, or is that just complete fantasy? Great question,
Hmm.
Largo Embargo. Thanks for writing in. Um,
I think there's another question, right, which I think is probably more important than this one, which is do Valve even want to do that? I don't
I
necessarily think
Yeah,
they do. I
I
don't think
agree.
that's where they are.
I don't think that's their goal, and, you know, I hope this doesn't come off as, like, flippant, but I don't know that I would argue that the Steam Deck is that revolutionary a device. It's certainly not the first device of its kind. There's been attempts at this kind of device before. I just think they're the first to get it right.
Mm.
So the idea that, like, the Steam Deck is so innovative and that, like, the PS5 or the Xbox Series X are not, right? Because they're safe, right? They're iterative. It's, hey, it's the next box. It's more powerful. It plays games a little bit better, yada yada yada. Um, I actually don't think that the diminishing returns argument is as strong as it might seem from the outset. Because I get like what you're saying, right, Largo? Where like you look at the jump from the NES to the Super NES or the Super NES to the N64, right? Or the PlayStation to the PlayStation 2 or the PlayStation 2 to the PlayStation 3. And those were bigger jumps in terms of, quality or depth or, visual fidelity, right? Like there were these large leaps forward where each generation was making strides that meant that certain types of games that wouldn't have been able to be made before could get made now. And I think where I get tripped up on that is I think people are too focused on resolution and that as the only sign of evolution in games, right? Because I look at the current gen consoles, and to me, the innovation, right, is in the experience of playing on the device. It is quick resume on Xbox. It is zero load times on either of those consoles for the most part. It is the ability to have old games come in and look like new games running at a higher frame rate and all those things. And I think on the PC side of the fence, some of those things are things that you take for granted, right? Like,
I think even aside from PlayStation and Xbox, I think Nintendo's dominating at the moment. We know they're on track to become outpace the DS as the second best selling console with the Switch, to become number two. And I think that offers other things as well. Like that offered being able to take these big games portably for the first time. And I do think the Steam Deck was an innovative device. But I get what you're saying. We spoke, I think, a couple of weeks ago about ultra mobile PCs and them being around since like 2006 with the Via UX, and it being like this idea of a handheld PC has been around for a while. But I think the Steam Deck was able to put a lot of those components together, and I think SteamOS could potentially overtake. I think something like SteamOS could overtake Microsoft's lead in Windows in being the de facto operating system to play PC games on. And I think Valve wants to operate in the PC space and continue to be the dominant marketplace and the
yeah.
dominant player in the PC space. I don't think they have any aspirations to take over the living room and to become a console maker anymore. I think they did once in a blue moon with the Steam boxes or Steam machines. I don't think that they do anymore. I think that ship's kind of sailed. I think the next place they're probably going to want to go to is maybe cloud, and I could see them introducing something with like cloud streaming in the future and going down that route, and
And,
being
and
able
I,
to stream, even if it's streaming your home games outside of the home, so you
yeah.
can play them on your Steam Deck when you're like connected to hotel Wi-Fi or something. I could see something like that happening.
And that's why I think I think it is a deeper question than that, right? The idea of like, because to just boil down the question, right, from Largo here, uh, do you think Valve has what it takes to become a pioneer in innovative new hardware and overtake them, or is that complete fantasy? I do think it is complete fantasy. I think even if that's what they wanted, I don't think they could do it. Genuinely, I think the idea it echoes the problem that Xbox is in right now, right? And just a few weeks ago, we talked about it on the Flip Screen Games podcast, right? Phil Spencer was on the Kind of Funny XCast, and he talked about how even if Starfield came out and was an 11 out of 10, right, and it was a genre generation defining game, it wouldn't necessarily change the console market share because I think people who are more platform agnostic, or even if you just play on PC, right, where you're used to just having a rig and buying whatever parts you're going to buy to continually evolve your rig, right? Um, you don't think about how strong brand identity and loyalty influence casual folks' purchasing decisions, right? In that interview, Phil Spencer made the point that they lost the worst generation in the Xbox One generation because that was the one where people built their digital libraries. I think there are a huge portion of people where if the only thing that PlayStation ever does is release the PlayStation 6 and it's stronger and more powerful and here's a new feature and it the games are better and the fidelity, blah, blah. That's a lot of people, that's all they want. They don't need innovation in hardware to win them over. They need the next thing and the thing that's going to guarantee this is where I can play the software that I care about playing. So with the idea of like
But that
that,
software's coming to PC, and I could see a time when PlayStation launches a similar scheme to Xbox Play Anywhere that I spoke about, where you can play your PlayStation library on PC that you've already purchased, and maybe you
maybe
need to purchase like an upgrade to bring them to PC, and you have like a PlayStation launcher, and you're still in that ecosystem, but you're on PC. And I do think PC players know about the power of branding and the power of that
I mean,
loyalty,
look at
and
Steam, right?
because look at Steam, and
Yeah,
they,
that's true.
that's you want your digital library, and you spoke about Xbox losing the digital library in the Xbox generation. Well, your digital library is in Steam, and there's a reason
Right.
why the Epic Game Store struggled to get a big foothold is
But
because people are just like, I only want one launcher, and that's Steam, and that's where all of my games are, and I want to be able to just keep them there.
and like you're definitely right, but honestly, what you're saying is I think only proving my point is that that doesn't what would Valve have to do to overtake companies that a core part of their identity is making hardware? It's like they would need to change their whole business model and they're not going to do that, right? I
I
think
think they've changed their view, like, they've changed people's perceptions of them even in the last year from,
sure
"Oh, Valve's that company that used to make Half-Life, and now they just
they own
run
Steam.
they own Steam." And now I think a lot of people know what Steam Deck is,
Sure.
and a lot of people are interested in it, and
Yeah,
it
but
has opened the floodgates to a new a new kind of device, and I do
yeah,
think that
absolutely.
it's really exciting to see in a year, we've gone from the Steam Deck to an ROG Ally, which has like potentially up to double the points. It doesn't really. I'm not at the same TDP anyway, but I could easily see the next Steam Deck being another generational leap. I do kind of agree with Largo and Bargo where there are diminishing returns on each generation of console because you always look at the last game of the previous generation, the first game of this generation. It never looks that great, but you do have to compare the last generation to
That's
the
the thing.
last game of the generation to the
That's not
last
a
game
fair
of the generation.
comparison. You know, it's
No,
like
I do get that, but you're investing for potentially 7 years in a single device, whereas
yeah.
I think on something like a Steam Deck, there's no way the current Steam Deck is going to be around for 7 years. I think probably next year or the year after, we're going to see the Steam Deck 2 or a revised Steam Deck with higher
But
power.
again, right, what you're arguing is not it's not really answering the question because I agree with you. I'm a Steam Deck owner, right? I literally, I consider myself an evangelist for the device, right? I go out and convince people they should get one. That said, it's a niche device, right? Like there are somewhere between 1 and 2 million in the wild, right? That is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of how many Xboxes there are in the wild, and they're in third place. So again, to answer the question, the idea that they could overtake one of those three, I don't think that's realistic. But I
Ah,
also, to
me
your
neither.
initial point, I don't think that's their strategy, and I don't think that's really relevant to their success, right? This being a niche product that speaks to a core segment of their audience, that they also speak to on traditional PCs, and that they could also speak to through cloud streaming and some of these other things that you talked about. I think that's the thing is it is more akin to Xbox's strategy of like, well, Steam is more like a frame of mind, like it's your Steam library lives with you wherever you go and play your games, however you want to play them. And that's their goal, right? Is whether that's creating big picture mode so you can have a console like experience, whether that's creating the Steam Deck so you can have a dedicated piece of hardware if that's your bag and you don't want to build a PC, or if you're a traditional PC gamer and you have a high end rig that you maintain and you're all up on that and that's what you like to do. Hey, they got you served that way too. And I think that's the strategy. It is like not how do we overtake the living room? It's not how do we replace the Switch? It's how do we carve out our own niche and do our own thing and speak to the people that want to engage with the way that we sell and make games. And I think that's Valve's strategy is like they don't care what the others are doing because they don't need to. Like they have their own ecosystem and their own business model, and it's successful. They don't need to compete on a raw power or like oh, we need to make something that's more creative or more innovative than what the other guys are doing because I don't really think they're in direct competition in that way.
No, I think they're potentially becoming in direct competition with Microsoft. I do think they care to some extent what they are doing, in that, Microsoft and Sony both sell their games on Steam, and they want to maintain those partnerships, and they want to keep selling those games because I would imagine that's pretty lucrative for Valve to get 30% of every
That's
copy of
right. Like if
The
they
Last
looked
of
at
Us
them as
Part
straight
One.
up competitors, would they have their games on their store? Probably not.
Mhm.
Like I
But
think the
I think they
Xbox thing
do
is
see.
an interesting argument. I think you're right about that. Particularly that they're trying to make SteamOS a legit competitor to
Yeah.
Windows. That is, I think, they're probably more direct competitors than even Xbox and PlayStation are when you get right down to it,
Well, yeah,
right?
because you've
Like
got the either you're buying your games on the Windows Store slash the Xbox app, or you're buying them on Steam or PC Game Pass, I imagine, took a chunk out of some Steam sales at a certain point. It's just like, oh, we've got to compete with this absolute juggernaut that people already have anyway, because they're already subscribed to Game Pass Ultimate and it comes with it. Not to mention the threat coming from the Epic Games Store and the other developers and publishers taking their games off of Steam to put it on other platforms and other stores. So I think really they probably view Microsoft as the biggest threat to their business, especially as they have a reliance on Windows. If one day Microsoft, and they won't because they will be sued into oblivion by probably the EU and the FTC, was just like, you know what, we're not going to allow Steam on our platform anymore, then you can't play PC games on Windows anymore. And I think they want to eliminate that fact, and they've been trying to do that with SteamOS since the original Steam machines and the original Big Picture mode years ago. It was right. Let's get our games running on Linux, and that's why they've invested so much money in Proton.
yeah, and that play is I think the most interesting thing they have working right now, right? It's and that I guess to put a pin on this, yes, the Steam Deck is a core part of their strategy. It shows that they have the ability to make good, awesome, compelling hardware. I also don't think they look at hardware as a key part of their strategy in terms of like this is the future of the company. I think it is more like we talked about
This is a
it's
way to flog more games. That's how they
yeah,
say it,
it's
I
a way to
think.
sell more games, but also it's a way to get new people into PC gaming. Because like you and I are the perfect example of this. Like historically, we talked before we got Steam Decks, we talked about how we didn't play a lot of PC games, right? I had a phase as a PC gamer, but I don't really. Consoles have always been my bread and butter, and I know lots of people that bought a Steam Deck that do not own a gaming PC, or they own a gaming PC and they don't use it, and they bought a Steam Deck, and that's how they engage with their Steam library. And we've talked about the way that they're entering like Japan and Korea and some of these other markets where PC gaming does not have the same lineage as it does in the West, and they're creating inroads there and they're selling it in stores and they're going to TGS and they're selling people on that ecosystem. And I think that is the bigger strategy with the Steam Deck is it's like a
I
Trojan
I'd love
horse.
to have I'd love to have a conversation there at some point as to, we've had that rumor that there's a PlayStation handheld at some point. Do you think that was a direct reaction to like the Steam Deck's announcement a couple of years ago?
I don't
Do you
know.
think PlayStation sees the Steam Deck being really successful in Japan again, in the same way that even the Vita was successful there, right?
It was.
They sold graphic novels for days on the Vita
Yeah.
to Japanese players. I can see that losing the handheld market in Japan is probably a big loss, and they don't even have a handheld offering anymore.
Mhm.
Even arguably Xbox has a handheld offering at this point with the partnerships with the Logitech G Cloud
I
and being
wonder
able
if
to
that's more
play
the
those
motivator
games
than
on
it
your
is the Steam
phone.
Deck, where it is like we need to have a solution and we don't want to invest in creating another SKU and supporting it. So this is what makes sense. And it's like it feels more akin to Xbox's strategy than Valve's because like
Mm.
what we've heard about the PlayStation handheld is that it's a streaming device. It's like a more of an accessory to the console rather than the Steam Deck is it's a console in its own right. It's a bona fide PC, right? And like I don't think that's what unfortunately, I don't think that's what PlayStation has in mind, right? Based on what we've heard. Even though I think that's what I would like. Maybe that's not the smartest idea, but I would rather them make a traditional handheld than a weird in between hybrid device. But I also we don't know what that looks like. So, the reports we've heard could be half truths. They could be early in development, right? Like the actual product itself could look a lot of different ways. And I mean, it would be really cool if you're right. I would love it if it comes out and it does look more akin to a Steam Deck. And part of it is that you can access this, the PlayStation library, that you have anywhere, and like you can have that kind of connectivity baked into it. That would be cool. But I don't know. Genuinely, I don't think anyone does that as good as Valve. That is probably the most innovative thing about the Steam Deck is like the play anywhere thing truly works, right? Because if you're a PC gamer and you have a rig at home that's your main system, and then you're like on the go, I'm gonna keep the party rolling and just play the game at 30 FPS, 720, and like chip away at Red Dead Redemption 2 or whatever big game you're playing. Um, like nobody really gives you the option to do that in a way that actually works, right? Like Xbox has that
Xbox
functionality,
tries with
but it's
Play
limited.
Anywhere, but it's not great. Yeah.
No, it's not there yet. I think it will get there, but it isn't there right now. And with Steam, it is, right? Because like Steam cloud saves are incredible. Like you just boot it up and it just works, right? Like you have basically parity between the home and the mobile version, and that's what you're looking for. Nintendo's the only one that offers that because it's literally that's the primary functionality of the device, right? Whereas like with the deck, it's you're doing it through the cloud. You're taking advantage of having a multi-device system.
And it's
And
so seamless as well. Like you close the game, it syncs all your saves up to the cloud, and then before you even launch the game, it's like downloading all of the latest saves and configs and where you were, and you can carry on where you left off. It is fantastic.
I
Even some of like I went back to games. So I downloaded this like when I got my Steam Deck, I downloaded
I was
Half-Life
just
2
about to
and I
say
was
that.
like, "Oh, there's my save from like
Yeah.
2011 and it's
Yeah.
still there and I can
So
carry on where I left off."
when I booted up Left 4 Dead 2 the first time as like a test, because I was like, oh, it's a game I know really well, right? Like it was like, oh, here's the last save you had from 2017, the last time you played it or whatever. And it's like, holy crap. Like I
Yeah, it's
can't
crazy.
believe how on top of it is. So like, I don't know. It would be
Yeah.
awesome to
I
see
have to
the
like
other
blow
guys
off the
try to chase
dust
that
off
a
the
little bit.
server rack in the back corner to be able to dig out your save from all those years ago.
So yeah, thanks for writing in. This is a great question. I think it's very thought provoking, and I think the sentiment that you're offering there, embargo, is like it speaks to why there is such a passionate fan base around the Steam Deck. Is that it is something different. It's a console in the ways that it's important that it is like a console, and then in every other way, it's a totally open modular thing. And while that is awesome, I don't think it's very mass consumer friendly, right? There's a reason that the iPhone was so dominant for so long in the Android, or not in the Android, in smartphone space, right? Because it's like people don't really like options. They would rather be told there's two options. You pick this one or you pick that one, or there's one option and it just
I mean, it
works.
still is it still is the dominant smartphone. I mean, you think about it, they have around 50% of the market share, and it's made by one company, and then every other company makes up the other 50%.
Right. Even if Android is the outweigher in OS, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Apple line is the most, and it's the most like one to one, right? Like it's like, oh, you get it, and it that's what everyone always says, right? Anyone who's an Apple person that isn't, like you're a programmer, so you're in a different echelon there. But like the average user, when I ask them, oh, why do you prefer Apple? It just works. That's the party line, right?
Mm.
That's what people want.
I'm stuck in the ecosystem. My whole family has iPhones. I use iMessage. I use the shared photos. I have bought things for years. We subscribe to Apple Plus, so it's like everything's there. And I use a Mac for work, so I'm like, I'm not moving to Android anytime soon. I always look over the other side of the fence, and I'm like, oh, that new Pixel Fold looks good. I'd quite like one of those,
They are
but
cool.
no, no, it won't be. Not anytime soon, anyway.
So yeah, I think we'll put a pin in it there for today. If you guys want to write in with your thoughts on the brand new Deck HD screen, or anything else we talked about today or on any other episode of the show, what are the upgrades you want to see for your Steam Deck? Are you gonna shell out the extra $100 and crack your Steam Deck open to replace the screen for better resolution? Is that the kind of thing you're interested in doing as a Steam Deck user, or are you happy to wait and see what the
Mm.
next model looks like from Valve? I'm interested because I know that tinkerers are a big part of the audience, but I wonder what the breakdown really is. How many people are that excited and that brave to take it apart and go through all that to have an optimal experience? I'm genuinely interested because I think I don't really know. I don't know how many of us are that comfortable and that stoked to do that stuff versus people like me who are like, "Oh, I would love to do that, but also I am terrified to open it."
And also leave a comment if you'd like to see Pete on a live stream opening his Steam Deck to replace the screen.
Maybe that's the move. I live stream it and then I make a video like to explain, "Oh, here's how you do it." But like, I think
Yeah,
people would like to watch me
here's how I
struggle through
forgot to discharge the battery and completely shorted out my Steam Deck. Yeah.
And here could be the really fun thing, right? It's like, all right, guys, I'm gonna stream this live, and if I break my Steam Deck, you guys gotta give me enough subs to get another one, and we'll try again. We'll stream it again next week. We'll crack open a second Steam Deck and see how we do.
Yeah, it'd be like that stream when the guy, cooked the chicken by slapping it. Do you remember that one? That was fun.
Yes. Oh, the internet can be a magical place, huh, Steve?
Mhm.
All right, so I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. Thank you guys for joining us on another episode of the Steam Deck podcast. Remember, if you want to go and write into the show and let us know what you thought about what we chatted about today, if you want to go and show your support, if you want to go and get the show early, if you want to come join our community and keep the conversation rolling on between episodes, guess what? You can head to one fantastic link. That's flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find links to all the places you can get involved. Come find us on YouTube. Go check out our tutorials. Go check out our sister shows. Right into the show. Become a Patreon supporter. Whatever you want to do, however you want to get involved. We thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Steam Deck podcast. And of course, we'll see you next week for more Steam Deck related news. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. Nope. He's been Steve. Nope. Wait. There he is. There he is. He's over there. You see him. Look at that beautiful boy. We'll see you next week, baby.